Requirements for a one-year Israeli Darkon passport. The Israeli Darkon passport system operates on a tiered structure that directly correlates the validity period of your passport with the amount of time you spend physically residing in Israel. While the most desirable outcome for many Israeli citizens is obtaining the prestigious 10-year Darkon that provides maximum travel flexibility, various circumstances can result in receiving a passport valid for only 1 year. Understanding these circumstances and the specific requirements for each pathway to a 1-year Darkon is essential for anyone navigating the Israeli passport system, particularly new immigrants who are still establishing their permanent residence in the country. For new immigrants to Israel, known as Olim, the pathway to obtaining any Darkon at all is significantly restricted during the initial period following their arrival. The Israeli government implemented substantial changes to passport regulations on January 22, 2025, fundamentally altering how new immigrants access travel documents. Under the current system, anyone who has made Aliyah within the past year is completely prohibited from obtaining a Darkon, regardless of how much time they spend in Israel during that first year. Instead, new immigrants must accept a laissez-passer or Teudat Ma'avar, which is valid for 5 years but carries more limited international recognition than a proper Darkon. This represents a significant shift from previous policies that allowed new immigrants to apply for passports after just 3 months of residency. Once a new immigrant has surpassed the critical 1-year threshold from their Aliyah date, the possibility of obtaining a Darkon finally opens, but it comes with stringent residency requirements. The most straightforward path to a 1-year Darkon for someone who made Aliyah more than a year ago involves demonstrating an unequivocal commitment to making Israel the center of their life. Specifically, if you have lived continuously in Israel for a full year without leaving the country at all, not even for brief vacations or family visits abroad, you become eligible to apply for a 1-year Darkon. This application can only be submitted starting on the 366th day from your date of entry for permanent residence, not a day sooner. The Ministry of Interior interprets this requirement quite literally, meaning that even a single day spent outside Israel during that year can disqualify you from this particular pathway to obtaining the passport. The logic behind this strict requirement reflects the Israeli government's interest in ensuring that new immigrants are genuinely committed to building their lives in Israel, rather than treating Israeli citizenship primarily as a passport of convenience. By requiring a full year of continuous residence, the authorities can distinguish between those who view Israel as their true home and those who may be maintaining their primary life center elsewhere while seeking the travel benefits of Israeli citizenship. When you apply for this 1-year Darkon after your year of continuous residence, the Ministry of Interior will scrutinize your application to verify that you did not leave the country during that period and that you have established genuine roots in Israeli society through employment, housing, and social integration. When your initial 1-year Darkon approaches expiration, the renewal process requires you to demonstrate once again that you intend to continue living in Israel permanently. The Ministry of Interior doesn't simply rubber stamp renewals for these limited validity passports. Instead, they will examine your actual residency patterns during the year that your passport was valid, looking at evidence such as tax records, employment documentation, rental or mortgage agreements, and any records of international travel that might suggest your life center has shifted away from Israel. If you successfully convince them of your ongoing commitment to Israeli residency and you've maintained the required percentage of time in the country, your next passport can be upgraded to a 5-year Darkon, providing significantly more stability and eliminating the need for annual renewals. Beyond the specific pathway for new immigrants who maintain continuous residence, there exists another calculation-based method for determining eligibility for a 1-year Darkon that applies more broadly to Israeli citizens, regardless of when they immigrated. This method focuses on the percentage of time you've spent in Israel relative to the total period since your Aliyah or since you last qualified for a longer-term passport. The general rule established by the Ministry of Interior stipulates that if you have spent at least 25% of the relevant time period in Israel, but less than 75%, you may be issued a 1-year Darkon. This creates a middle ground between those who maintain insufficient presence in Israel to qualify for any Darkon at all, who receive only a laissez-passer, and those whose substantial residency qualifies them for the more desirable 5-year or 10-year passports. The 25% threshold represents the absolute minimum residency that the Israeli government considers sufficient to justify issuing a full passport rather than merely a travel document. If your calculations reveal that you've spent less than 25% of the qualifying period in Israel, the Ministry of Interior will decline to issue a Darkon entirely, offering only a laissez-passer instead. This can present significant complications for your international travel plans, as the laissez-passer, while accepted by many countries, doesn't enjoy the same universal recognition as a proper Israeli passport and may require you to obtain visas for destinations that would otherwise grant visa-free access to Darkon holders. Therefore, maintaining at least 25% residency becomes crucial for anyone who needs the full benefits of Israeli passport privileges. Calculating these percentages requires careful documentation of all your international travel. The Ministry of Interior has access to comprehensive entry and exit records from Israeli border control, so attempting to misrepresent your time in the country would be both futile and potentially damaging to your citizenship status. When preparing your application, it's advisable to create your own detailed timeline of all trips abroad, including exact dates of departure and return, to ensure your calculations align with the government's records. Any discrepancies can lead to delays in processing or outright rejection of your application, so accuracy is paramount. Keep in mind that the calculation typically looks at full calendar days, and the way partial days are counted can sometimes make a difference in whether you meet the threshold, so erring on the side of caution in your planning is wise. Emergency passports represent yet another category of one-year Darkon that operates under entirely different circumstances and serves a distinct purpose from the residency-based passports discussed above. These emergency passports are designed for urgent situations where an Israeli citizen needs immediate travel capability but lacks a valid passport due to loss, theft, damage, or expiration. Unlike the regular passport application process, which typically requires advance appointments and can involve waiting periods even with expedited service, emergency passports can be issued the same day at Ben Gurion Airport or at any of 17 designated population and immigration authority branches located throughout Israel, though processing still requires several hours. To obtain an emergency passport, you must present concrete evidence of your urgent need to travel, typically in the form of a booked flight departing within a very short time frame. The required documentation includes your expired passport if you have one available, your current Teudat Zehut or Israeli identity card, 2 recent passport-sized photographs that meet biometric standards, and an Israeli credit card for payment of the applicable fees. You'll also need to complete a specific form designated for emergency passport requests. The entire process, from arrival at the office to receiving your emergency passport, can take anywhere from a few hours to most of a day, depending on how busy the office is and whether any complications arise with your application or documentation. It's important to understand that emergency passports, while providing immediate relief in crisis situations, come with certain limitations beyond just their one-year validity period. Once you've been issued an emergency passport, the regulations previously stated that you could not be issued a second emergency passport unless you obtained a regular biometric passport in between. However, as of 2024, this restriction has been temporarily lifted pending further notice, allowing multiple emergency passports to be issued if necessary. Nevertheless, relying on emergency passports as a long-term strategy is neither advisable nor sustainable. They're intended as genuine emergency measures, and the Ministry of Interior expects citizens who use this service to subsequently apply for proper regular passports through the standard channels once their immediate travel emergency has passed. The fundamental principle underlying all these various pathways to a one-year Darkon is the Israeli government's determination to ensure that Israeli citizenship and the accompanying passport privileges remain connected to genuine residence in and commitment to the State of Israel. This policy reflects both practical concerns about passport fraud and ideological commitments to encouraging Jewish immigration and settlement in Israel. The government wants citizens who hold Israeli passports to maintain real ties to the country, rather than treating Israeli citizenship as merely a convenient second passport that provides visa-free travel to many desirable destinations. By tying passport validity periods directly to time spent in Israel, the authorities create ongoing incentives for citizens to maintain their Israeli residence even after the initial immigration period. For anyone planning to apply for a one-year Darkon, regardless of which pathway applies to your situation, preparation and documentation are essential. You should gather comprehensive records of your time in Israel, including lease agreements or property ownership documents, employment contracts or tax records, utility bills, and any other evidence that demonstrates your physical presence in and ties to the country. If you've been outside Israel for any significant periods, be prepared to explain the reasons for your absence and to demonstrate that these absences were temporary rather than indicative of a permanent relocation. Having this documentation organized and readily available when you attend your appointment can significantly streamline the application process and reduce the likelihood of delays or requests for additional information. The financial costs associated with obtaining any Israeli passport, including the one-year Darkon, should also be factored into your planning. Passport fees in Israel can be substantial, and they vary depending on several factors, including the urgency of issuance, whether you're applying during the discount period typically offered from November through February, and whether you qualify for any special discounts, such as those available to active duty soldiers or reservists. Paying your fees online in advance generally results in a lower total cost compared to paying in person at the Ministry of Interior office. Given that a one-year passport will need to be renewed annually, if you continue to qualify only for this limited validity period, these costs can accumulate significantly over time, providing yet another incentive to work toward meeting the requirements for a longer validity passport. Understanding the distinction between a one-year Darkon and the longer validity options helps clarify the ultimate goal for most Israeli citizens. While the one-year passport serves its purpose and provides the same international travel rights as longer validity Darkons, the inconvenience of annual renewals, the uncertainty about whether each renewal will be approved, and the accumulated costs make it a less desirable option than securing a 5-year or 10-year passport. If you find yourself in the position of receiving a one-year Darkon, it should ideally serve as a stepping stone toward establishing the residency patterns that will qualify you for a longer-term passport at your next renewal. This means consciously planning your international travel to ensure you're spending sufficient time in Israel, maintaining documentary evidence of your Israeli residence, and demonstrating through your life choices that Israel truly is your primary home.